Jack Smith has been smoted on the ice like the Balrog. We're going to read an article from Politico where the Trump presidential immunity case is done. Jack Smith is smoted. We're going to put on our American Kaiju helmet. Oh, let's engage the power of the helmet. I can feel the founders coursing through my armor as we defend this great republic. As judges mull presidential immunity, Trump reaps the benefits of a delay. For over 3 weeks, the DC Circuit has been sitting on a potentially decisive question. Good, keep sitting. Look how happy Trump is. Guys, whether Trump faces a potential prison sentence in 2024 is at the mercy of federal appeals court that's operating on its own schedule at a time when every day matters. The Democrats are going, hurry, speed this up. Forget protocol. We need this done quick. More than 50 days have elapsed since Trump's criminal proceedings in a Washington, D.C. trial court on charges for attempting to subvert the 2020 election were paused indefinitely. They won't resume until the D.C. Court of Appeals and most likely the Supreme Court resolve the question hanging over the entire case, whether Trump, as a former president, is immune from criminal prosecution. So this is all gummed up in a glorious way. Even if those courts ultimately reject Trump's immunity arguments, an outcome that most legal experts expect, the protracted delays help the former president, whose strategy across his various trials have been to drag them out for as long as possible. Lengthy delays in his federal criminal cases create the possibility that if he wins the presidency in November, Trump could avoid the charges altogether by having the Justice Department and the prosecutions, or perhaps even by pardoning himself. That's the power that the president has. He can go to the DOJ, the Department of Justice, and just say, look, end this, and they'll end it. That's what Merrick Garland does for Joe Biden. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan, Obama appointee.
It's a problem that humanity's got to deal with over the next several decades.
Who is overseeing Trump's federal election case, has tried to keep it on an expeditious track. Nice try. And the trial is officially slated to begin March 4th. Chutkan, though, has strongly suggested she'll push back that start date to account for each day of delay caused by Trump's immunity appeal. Even if the appeal were resolved this week against Trump, that calculation would put his earliest trial date in late April. But if the D.C. Circuit and the Supreme Court take additional weeks or months to deliver a final ruling, the opening days of Trump's trial could be pushed to summer or fall. Again, all good news for Trump. If at this point Trump retains his grip on the 2024 GOP presidential nominee, he and his allies are certain to exert intense pressure to postpone the trial until after the election. Chutkan, an Obama appointee, all say could plow forward with the trial anyway, and she's repeatedly indicated that the campaign calendar has no bearing on her own. But doing so would require Trump to sit in a courtroom for weeks during the heart of the campaign. Trump has already used his crowded legal calendar as a campaign cudgel to raise funds and rally supporters by claiming to be the victim of political prosecutions and lawsuits. It's all true. And even if they do get him in a court case, he will only raise money and his polls will go up. Remember, Trump needs all this to win. The Democrats thought it would make him lose, but it backfired. We've already covered all that. He's only going to win because people are aware now of what the state's doing. For now, the timing of the case remains in the hands of a 3-judge panel of the D.C. Circuit, which heard arguments on the immunity case on January 8th that in reality has placed immense power in the hands of a few judges guided by the opaque internal procedures, seniority, and norms of collegiality that make reliable prediction impossible. The Democrats hate those norms of collegiality that give seniority to one judge that is the secret power. We're going to get to her in just a minute. Many legal experts had expected the D.C. Circuit panel to rule quickly after the arguments, perhaps within a few days. Nice try. But for more than 3 weeks, the court has been silent. There's no required deadline for the ruling. I wonder who's gumming it all up. Let's find out. Quote, the timing of a decision by the panel will indeed be a critical determinant of whether the case goes forward expeditiously, said Daniel Richman, a Columbia University law professor. Richman said Trump's arguments for immunity were so outlandish, so we already know he's a liar, that the appeals court should have little trouble rejecting them. So what's taking so long? But he said the court must take its time to issue a careful ruling because of the certainty Trump will keep pressing his immunity claim. Quote, quite a few stars would have to align before the trial can proceed, Richmond said. So Richmond's already appealing to the pagan stars alignment, to astrology. That's his only hope. If those stars do align, the timing will be crucial. Special counsel Jack Smith, the villain, has established that his case would take nearly 2 months to present, and Trump is almost certain to present a defense that could add additional weeks to the timeline. That raises the prospect of Trump being required to spend the duration of the Republican National Convention or even Election Day itself in a courtroom, which Democrats don't care. They've already thrown out all rules, all notions of manners and tradition. They don't care. They will put Trump right in that courtroom on Election Day, which again will only help Trump win. Or if the Supreme Court agrees to hear Trump's bid for immunity, but won't take up his appeal on an emergency basis, the trial could remain on hold until after the election. And if Trump wins, he would be virtually certain to shut down the case. So either way, he wins, guys. The 3-judge DC Circuit panel initially appeared to be moving swiftly. So they were all getting their hopes up. Yeah, we got Trump. We got him. It took up the matter on an emergency basis in December and held oral arguments a few weeks later. They're like, this is an emergency fast, a lightning quick schedule for a typically plotting court. The judges seemed poised to reject Trump's sweeping immunity claim at the time, but the precise contours of their ruling were less obvious. And it's possible the judges could splinter over the details, further delaying the ruling. Who's doing this, guys? Who is helping Trump? The urgency of the ruling to the prosecution has drawn unusual scrutiny of the internal machinations of the appeals court, such as whether a single judge, perhaps Karen Henderson, an appointee of President George H.W. Bush, could prevent the ruling from coming out quickly, even if the panel's other 2 judges, Florence Pan and Michelle Childs, appointed by President Joe Biden, are ready to rule. It's George H.W. Bush's gift to America that's saving Trump. Because I know G.H.W. Bush George Herbert Walker gets a lot of trouble from the right. I just want to say this appointment, which he might have made in pure stupidity, is going to save Trump because she's probably the one delaying the appeals course against Fan and this other criminal Childs appointed by Biden. And gee, why don't they recuse themselves? They're only appointed by Biden. You know, you don't think there's a conflict of interest? Henderson, the panel's senior judge, had expressed opposition to taking up the case on an expedited basis and also had the most cryptic outlook based on her questions during oral arguments. As the most senior judge, she has the right to write the majority opinion if she's in the majority. And even if she disagrees with her colleagues, she could potentially hold back the court's ruling for weeks or months while she crafts a dissenting opinion. She's going to be all, hold on, guys, I got to take my time on this. Good girl. There is no formal rule or policy at appeals court that allows the majority on the panel to force the release of a ruling when another member of the panel hasn't completed his or her opinion. According to Matthew Seligman, a former DC Circuit law clerk who is co-counsel on a friend of the court brief in the case filed by former Republican officials opposing Trump's immunity claim. Quote, at this point, it's uncomfortable how long it's taken. But I don't think you can look at it and say it's on its face absurd, said Seligman, who said judges in the majority would likely wait much longer before trying to cajole or force the release of a ruling while a colleague is still writing. She's just a very slow writer. Let her take her time. I don't think we're really close to a point where the judges in the majority would consider taking whatever measures they could, and it's not clear what those are. What are we going to do? We can't hurry this judge. Doesn't she know there's a timeline? Doesn't she know that we have to treat this case special We have to treat Trump different because of an election. So remember, Chutkin said, I don't treat him different because there's election. Fannie Willis said, we don't treat them because of their election. No one's above the law. We have to treat them just like everybody else. And this judge is saying the same thing, and the Democrats are freaking out that they have to be held by their own rules and standards. The time it takes for the appeals panel to mull over the weighty question could also influence the likely Supreme Court battle to follow. If Trump loses at the appeals court, he's already announced his intention to seek the higher court's judgment and has begun a public campaign to persuade them to endorse a boundless definition of presidential immunity. The longer it takes for the appeals court to rule, the likelier the Supreme Court would punt the issue into the fall, effectively ruling out a trial before the election. Democrats lose, Trump wins. Biden, your little plan with the Department of Justice and Jack Smith has been foiled. Because Jack Smith knows this whole thing. He does not get what he wants. All the corruption, all of their DC juries, all of their DC court cases. They lost control because of one appeals court judge appointed by G.H.W. Bush. That's why the timing of the DC Circuit's opinion could bear heavily on whether Trump sees a criminal trial that carries the risk of jail time in 2024. Yeah, life is hard. Trump is facing 3 other criminal cases, one brought by Smith in Florida, which we already know Eileen Cannon's also taking her time on that one, in which Trump stands accused of hoarding national security secrets at his Mar-a-Lago estate. After leaving office, they're saying he stole these documents, even though Obama has taken all of his millions of documents and has not turned them over to the National Archives. But Trump, they find a handful of them there. They find even more in Biden's garage, and he did not have the authority to have them, and he gets away with it. One in Georgia brought by local prosecutors who say Trump conspired to subvert the presidential election in 2020. How's that case going, Fannie Willis? That's a 3rd one down. And one in New York brought by a Manhattan district attorney who says Trump falsified his company records to mask hush money payments he made to conceal an alleged affair with a porn star. So he pays some dough and he's done with that one. There's no jail time. A trial in New York case is officially slated to begin late March, though Trump is still pushing to toss it all together. And even if it moves forward, the anticipated punishment is expected to be minimal. The Georgia case has not yet been scheduled, but is likely to be shunted to 2025, given its complexity and laundry list of unresolved issues, because Fannie Willis went too far, gouged them, went for RICO cases that are going to be so much harder to prove, 18 defendants that they have to go through and do all their cross-examinations and discovery on. And the classified documents case in Florida, set for May 20th, also appears likely to be pushed back as U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon, a Trump appointee, has extended key pretrial deadlines, foiling evil Jack Smith and the Democrats. The pause in the proceedings in the election-focused case in Washington began on December 7th when Trump appealed Chutkin's conclusion that neither he nor any former president enjoys immunity from criminal prosecution. And Chutkin has acknowledged that as long as the immunity question remains unresolved, Trump is under no obligation to continue preparing for trial. In conclusion, Trump is winning. Jack Smith got jacked. Chutkin is crying in her vegan meal. And now the battle is over. And in celebrating that, we're going to take off the American kaiju armor. For those of you who lost hope, who say all is lost, who say the corruption's too great, guys, this is a huge win. All their efforts on these indictments so far are not going to stop Trump from being the president. So their end game has been foiled. I'm Doug in exile.